Hello. This is a bit of a different one for me, so I'm not actually out of the moors in this one, but thought I'd do one on route cards and route planning. I'm in the middle of it anyway. I don't know if you watched my last video, but I said that I had the weekend free, so I'm going out for the whole weekend. Obviously, in the middle of planning said route, so thought might as well do a video on it. So yeah, I mean, you can just go out and wander around aimlessly on Dartmoor for a day or a weekend or a week or a month or whatever you fancy doing. And there's no harm in that. And I do it sometimes. Sometimes it's nice not to plan. Like it kind of, in a way, planning kind of takes enjoyment out of it, doesn't it? Because you're there just to explore. So yeah, sometimes nice go and have a little wander and just crack on. If I'm going out for a day hike or a day walk, then to be honest, I do plan because I'm trying to do this TARS thing. If you've not seen that, TARS is basically tours and rocks of significance. Tours of Dartmoor website, check that out because that's where I get the information from. It's a list I'm going off. Really, really good website, Tours of Dartmoor. But on the day hikes, I say I will plan my route, but I will vary. I will detour depending on ground, possibly. If I see bloody cows, I end up walking a long way around them. Not a big fan of cows. But yeah, so aimless wandering is absolutely fine and quite enjoyable. And please do not think that that's something that you shouldn't be doing because it is fun. But if you're going out like I intend to for quite a distance this weekend and over a couple of days, it's good to plan your route and do a route card. Now, the reasons for this one is you have a goal. Right? If you've got a goal, you know what you're intending to do, you know how far you're going, you know how long it's going to take you. So that's nice. You've got targets to meet. Mhm. Secondly, and really, really importantly, is the safety aspect of it. If you can tell someone where you're going because you have a pre-planned route, then if the worst happens, if SHTF, like you break your ankle or you get stuck or the weather turns or whatever it might be, then whoever you've given that route card to knows where you roughly should be at a certain time or a certain stage. It will help with rescue groups then to hopefully locate you and save you, which is always a bobby bonus, isn't it? That being said, if you do a spontaneous one, just tell someone roughly where you're going. If I shoot off in the morning, I'm like, oh, I'm going for a walk. Sometimes I'm like, I don't really know where I want to go. I'll just start driving and go, oh, I'm going to go, say, Fernworthy. So text or phone someone and say, look, I'm Fernworthy area. If you don't come back, they know roughly what areas to look for you. That's better than having the whole of Dartmoor to look in it. Actually starting to plan the route, you need to know firstly how long you've got. Have you got a morning to go walking? Have you got a day? Have you got a weekend? Have you got a week? Whatever it may be. There's no point planning a 100-mile walk when just going on the map and going bang 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 and going all those places, and you've got a day to do it in. Right? It's pointless to know how long you have got for your expedition. Then have a look at the weather reports. Now, a lot of people look at the weather. Which obviously you need to, but they kind of don't get why you're looking at the weather, or they look at the weather for the weekend that they're going away and they go, oh, look, it's going to be dry all weekend, happy days. If it's not, you need to also take into account the weather that has been the previous days or weeks, maybe even a month, right? Because, if you're in an area that is potentially going to be wet, say in a basin, where there's a lot of rivers and brooks all converging, at the top of a plateau where there's a lot of river heads, which, by the way, is this one that I'm planning now. There's one of the heads, it's the river, like the Dart, the Tame, the Tall. I think there's a few brooks and stuff there, all come off of one plateau. So no matter what time of year, that's going to be bloody wet. And if it's been raining horrendously, it's going to be extremely wet, extremely boggy. So think about the wetness. Wind. If you're going to get high gusts of wind on the weather report, you don't want to be planning to camp somewhere that is really, really exposed. You're just going to get battered by the wind all night, and it's not much fun, is it really? Right? Even then the heat. Right? If it's going to be really, really hot, if you're going out in the middle of summer, extreme temperatures, then you can only carry so much water yourself. Dehydration is a really big problem, really dangerous thing, which you should take into account. So plan a route that goes past some big rivers, or at least some fast flowing brooks, something of a decent size, where you can collect water from. Obviously, filter it, boil it, purify it, whatever you need to do to it to make it safe. But take that into consideration. Also, it's important to know your capabilities. You know, if you're new to walking or you're not particularly fit, which I've got to admit my fitness could definitely do with some work, but you know, it's you have to take that into consideration. Don't think you're going to go out and be a hero and walk 100 kilometers in a day when you've not really done backpacking, you haven't got the right idea. Um, you know, you just think about your capabilities. Don't overreach. What I always like to plan personally for myself, and I consider myself quite an experienced walker with, say, a reasonable level of fitness, definitely could be improved. 100% fitness could be improved, but it's not too bad. 3 kilometers an hour. Now that, even saying that 3 kilometers an hour, that's a very basic guideline for myself personally, because 3 kilometers on a path, easy. You know, I could do a lot more. 3 kilometers across rough moorland, maybe throw in a river crossing, a cliff field to walk across. Maybe within those 3 kilometers, you've got 2 tours with very steep inclines to go up. It's all going to slow you down. So this is something we'll come on to later, but it's having a look at your map and kind of determining what kind of ground and what kind of area, what kind of contours that you are going to be traveling across, and you can allow for that in your time. I know I just go 3 kilometers an hour. That's what I base it on, and I know that that will average out for me personally, because there'll be a mixture of tracks, hills, rivers, whatever it may be. Okay, so now we've taken all of those points into consideration, then we're going to actually start plotting the route. So based on that information that you've just gone through and deciphered, then you have hopefully picked somewhere, a rough area where you want to go. Now we start, basically we get the map and we put dots on the map. This is the way I do it. Other people do it a different way, but I find this pretty simple and an effective way to plan a route. Use a waterproof map, because then you can just use a Sharpie pen or whatever, and you can just wipe it off after, and you've got a brand new map again. Paper map, you start putting dots on it and you ruined your map. And also paper maps are no good. If you're going out seriously, don't use paper maps. They're bloody rubbish. Okay then, so next you actually want to start plotting your route by dots on the map. So I'm starting here. All right, that is my start point. I'm going to dot it on the map. I'm also going to write down the description or name of the place and a grid reference, preferably 8-figure, but you know, 6 figures okay. If you're using the GPS, you can go to 10, that's up to you, but I find 8-figure is more than excessive, really. So first place, then I can't remember exactly where they were, but we'll say that second place. That's second place, grid reference. Third place, grid reference. Fourth place, grid reference, etc, etc, etc. Right, so you've actually dotted out your route and you've recorded, just on a scrap bit of paper, this will all be transferred to the route card later, but you recorded your points, your legs, if you will. Now, you will have also noticed that I split this down. So we got Friday, a few places to go to and camp. I know that that is approximately 4 kilometers. I'm not going out till later Friday, so that's a very comfortable walk for me to do all of the points that I've listed here, all the locations rather, and set up a camp by the time it's around about dark. So that's all part of the planning, is knowing how far you're going, how far you can go, and what you can achieve at what time you want to set up camp. So take all of this into consideration whilst you are planning your route. Also, a a note of why I personally like to scribble this down before I actually transfer it to a route card is because you'll see here, for example, then I said Tour's End was my next location after Scary Tour, then Nine Maidens, then looked and thought it would be actually more sensible to do them the other way around. So I reversed them on this, so when I transfer it to the route card, that will be in the correct order. Otherwise, you're just wasting a route card, and you're wasting all of that detail and that time and that effort when you can just go through, do it roughly like this, bang, 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 and then transfer it once you have an exact route. So just a quick example of why you should use a plastic covered or plastic coated map. So paper ones, it doesn't come off. On these, that is plastic coated. You can either use alcohol, gel, or, you know, anything of that nature, even deodorant. And see the dots? Give them a bit of a spray. Bit of tissue paper, which I'm sure every man has near to his computer desk for some strange reason. But there you go, brand new map again. Okay, so obviously there is a lot more positions to plot on this map for this particular route, but it's pretty self-explanatory and repetitive from here on in. So I'll show you at this stage, and then you can just continue if you wish to follow this. So there is a lot of route cards online, a lot of templates that you can just download, but none of them quite met the requirements that I wanted. They didn't have the correct spacings, they didn't have the information, the sections, etc. So I knocked up this myself in Word. Literally took me 10 minutes, and this is one that I think covers my personal needs anyway. So obviously, self-explanatory: expedition date, start date, end date, emergency contact, really, really important. Always put emergency contact in case SHTF. Expedition participants, obviously in this case will be me, but if you're in a group, put down the names and numbers. Obviously you've got all this space up here, doesn't have to be neat, but you can write down everyone's names and numbers. If one of you has a signal, then there's more chance, you know. You always put down every detail. The total distance, which you won't be able to do at the beginning, that will be totaled up at the end. The duration, again, will be totaled up at the end. So let's actually start filling it in. Leg 1 is the start. Obviously, as we've dotted out on our map previously, we can then refer to our notes. And we're starting at the Weir at 60409485. So leg 1, Weir 60409485. So we've now got our first point. Now the second point that we go into, you have to excuse my writing. See, I'm trying to do this behind the camera. Ashbury Tour. So Ashbury Tour, and that is 60519410. 60519410. Right, now, because, see, the name, time depart, this is our start point, then we're going over to our next point. So we now need to say the date. Obviously, we know that's going to be the 4th of Feb, 4th of the 2nd, 22. So please excuse my writing. Depart time, I will say 15:30. These are all really, really self-explanatory, these sections. Now, time of arrival, you cannot fill that in until you know the duration and the distance. So this is where we start using the compass. So we know that start point is 1, obviously next point is 2 in numerical order, kind of makes sense. Now you can figure it out, bang, 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 and get really detailed, but we're just going to go roughly, just for video purposes. That is, we're going to say around about 900 meters if you take in the waviness of the path. So distance is 900 meters. Now we know that we said we was going to base it on 3 kilometers an hour. So call that 1,000 meters. That is a third of a kilometer. So that means it's going to take us approximately 20 minutes. So now we can go back and say that 20 minutes, because we left at 15:30, then we're going to arrive there at 15:50. I hope this is making sense. And also a bearing. Now I'm going to show you a bearing here, even though obviously you would not take a bearing because it is a path to follow. But on future legs, say if you're going from here to here, then you can add a bearing in. So obviously we go bang bang, take the bearing. I'm not going to go into bearings and grid references in this video, that I will do that at a later date, but we'll write the bearing in, whatever that might be. So that now tells you that when you get there, you at that point take that bearing, walk on that bearing for 900 meters, and you will hit your point. So all your information's here. You could potentially do away with the map. Obviously, don't do that, but in theory. Right, notes. Now, this section I think is quite important, and it relates back to what we've just said. On this section, there is not a bearing. So on this particular leg, from 1 to 2, notes, I would write something like follow footpath by river. Right, so I now know, before I've even got there, I know what I'm expecting. Just by looking at my route card, I know that I am going to go, and leg 1, the day is a bit irrelevant, but it's important to put in. I'm going to depart at 15:30 from the Weir, which is grid reference 60409485. I'm going to arrive at 15:50 at Ashbury Tor, which is grid reference for it. The duration is 20 minutes. It's going to take me at about 900 meters. So when we come on to pacing in a later video, that 900 meters could be quite important. The bearing, let's say, is irrelevant here, but on future legs could be actually quite important. And my notes, follow footpath by river. So I already know what I'm doing. Just by looking at that route card, I know what is going to happen in that leg. So now you go from, you've arrived at Ashbury Tor, so your next leg is 2. That grid reference is your start point of the last leg. So Ashbury Tor. So we go Ashbury Tor. I say, excuse the writing, I will redo this for my proper route card, but there's a little bit of a funny angle behind the camera. We know the grid reference, so we just copy that there. And then we put in our next location, which is number 3, which, if we refer back to our notes earlier, is Ashbury Lower Crags. So we go Ashbury Lower Crags, and then that grid reference, and then we'd go and we'd repeat, we'd figure out, obviously the date's going to be the same, and we'd go all the way through the grid references, we'd figure out the distance, we'd write any notes about the terrain. Is there a river crossing? Is there bad ground? Is it a steep incline? You know, there's any kind of description that you can give yourself just to preempt what you're going to come up across is obviously advantageous. And then we repeat, and we repeat. In this case, we would go all the way down to number 7, and that is our camp for the night. So this line here, personally, I would go camp, so that there is a definitive break in that route card, so you know exactly what is going on. Obviously, going back up to the top section here, then the duration and the distance, then when you have totaled that at the end of the route card, so that's the first page, you can then just print multiple pages for as long as your route may be. Once totaled at the end, then you can fill in your expedition distance and your expedition duration. So you basically, before you set off, by this pre-planning method, you know exactly where you're going to go, what points you're going to go, your duration of the expedition, the distance of the expedition. So we've now got our route card filled out, which, happy days, you know, we know exactly where we're going, what we're doing, where we're going to visit. Now, with the route card, once you've completed it, obviously mine's not complete, that's going to take me several hours to do, so I will complete that before I go out onto this little adventure. But you can then print minimum 3 copies, in my opinion. 2 copies should be plastic coated. Now you can laminate them on a normal laminator, you know what you get with your computer printer, whatever it is. Now the problem with this is laminated stuff is really hard to fold. You try and fold it and it just flexes back or it creases, and it's just rubbish. Fablon is the best. If you don't know what Fablon is, this is Fablon. It's just a roll of clear plastic with a sticky backing. So you can then cover it. It's not the neatest way to do it. It's a little bit scruffy, and to be honest, but it does allow you to, if it was a laminated, you try folding that, it's not happening. This is Fablon. Fold, 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 and just throw that in your pocket then, can you? Now, the reason for several copies, one should be in your pocket, obviously, or close to hand at least, so that it's a reference at all times. You should have a spare copy for yourself in case you lose that one. You know, wind, fall in a river, whatever it might be, you might lose it, so just throw one just in the bottom of your bag. Hopefully you shouldn't need it. Very unlikely you'll need it, but it's there just in case. Then at least 1 copy to one other person, an emergency contact, and preferably a second or third to other emergency contacts. So you are completely covered. You know, there's a few people that know where you are. You've got a few copies. Everybody's happy. If the worst should happen, then hopefully you get found. I hope that was a useful video. And yeah, as always, like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Hey, thanks very much. Hopefully see you on that walk.